Welcome back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. Joining me again in the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. How are you?
So you still haven't changed your intro? Still haven't come up with anything?
You've given me some homework to do, right? But I'm the son of a South Island farmer. I'm very traditional at conversing. I just can't get away from the hi, how are you to start with.
That's just so lame.
It is lame. I was going to do Konnichiwa.
So, yeah, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but I'm about to tell you how to do your job. So here's what I'd do, right? So you got the intro music. Just kick the intro music in, keep it rolling, talk over the top of it, maybe tune it down a little bit and then fade it out at the end. But here's what I'd do. Here's my intro. Here's my intro for this week. On the sedition, enough is enough, says Scott Robinson, as calls grow in Canterbury to outlaw the try-saving tackle on Crusaders players. Damian Willemse owners ask, is my season The answer to that question later in the show. But yes, you're And which FRD podcast host is following the trend and rocking a top knot this season? The answer may surprise you. All this and more coming up.
That's solid. That's a solid start. That is an intro. No, can't beat that. Let me just write all that down. That's good. That's really good. On this podcast, we're going to look through Gameweek 2. We're going to go through highs and lows, and perhaps look a little bit forward to the waiver wire, see who may be available. We're going to do our 4 in form quiz with Mossman again. But you can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rug Draft. That's Fantasy RUG Draft, or drop us a note at support@fantasyrugbydraft.com. A lot of people sending stuff through behind closed doors, which is great. A lot of start bench questions, a lot of trade questions coming up really early on in this season, as well as people are reacting to what they've seen for the first full round. So let's crack into it. Blues Highlanders. Where do you want to start here, Nathan?
Bryn Gatland. Let's start with Bryn Gatland. Probably the surprise packet. And,
big packet.
Yeah. And I think the thing that probably surprised me the most was that we were all under the impression that he's this kind of safe pair of hands, first five, not particularly flashy, but there to sort of do the job while pair of franchises out. But as even the commentators pointed out for once, astutely, he when he ran, he was dangerous, and that was really what sort of made the difference. So yeah, it was kind of an eye-opening performance, really.
Yeah, it was. We kind of mused after we'd finished our Facebook Live session. It's like, what if Bryn Gatland turns out to be like the second coming? From a fantasy perspective, he's got a backline that could do it. And we kind of dismissed it a little bit. And to be honest, he probably isn't, but that was a really strong performance. And he did take it to the line a few times as well. And having Sonny Bill Williams and Moala outside you drags a lot of attention. And that's pretty much how he scored his try. Which, one of the things I've got written down here is, are we going to have another season like this from Sonny Bill Williams and Moala from a fantasy perspective? Because they weren't particularly good at all. They were like 4 points and less than that, so one to watch there as well. What did you make of the Highlanders midfield? We learned a little bit about the team naming. Tay Walden, Matt Thompson. Matt Thompson's a good mate of mine, actually. Rob Thompson.
You've amalgamated Fatters and
yeah, that's right, exactly.
Thompson. Yeah. What did we learn? It's the obvious thing is Rob Thompson looks good, but once again, it's. He had a great game. Let's see. Walden, I'm still not believing it. And even the points that he got, it just kind of seemed like, it was one of them was a bounce of the ball and, another one was sort of running through a pretty big hole. And I don't know, I'm still not a believer.
Yeah, I think we've had a few false dawns with Rob Thompson before. I'm actually a big fan of his. I think at 13, he looks a little bit of a different player. Previously he's been playing 12 a little bit, and I think he looks a little bit thinner. I don't know if you thought that as well, but I thought he looks a little bit more trimmed down. And I think if he does go in that 13 jumper, and maybe when Buckman comes back, which could be a while actually, it could be his role. So yeah, I'd be more inclined to lean towards Thompson over Waldham if you had to give me a choice. But yeah.
Oh, 100%. I don't think that's even in question, really.
No, I guess Tay Walden's probably out there in a few waiver wires, which a few folks are going to wonder, should we pick him up? And I guess it's just a matter of evaluating who you are cutting. If you've got someone like Godwin, then yeah, probably. But apart from that,
you think so, Godwin? I think that's interesting.
I think we've seen his best performance here.
Okay, fair enough. What about Jason Emery?
Yeah, I've got it. We'll get to that. I think that's a bit of a. Well, I don't know what to make out of that, because that Sunwolves game, they played well. the Sunwolves, and the Brumbies looked a little bit rusty, which they certainly weren't pre-season, so I'm not sure it can be attributed to that as well. But I wonder if players and teams go up to Japan and it comes a little bit of a sideshow as opposed to all about business. They get a bit distracted around the new shiny thing in Japan, and perhaps they didn't apply themselves as much as they should. But back to the question, would I do Tay Walden over Emery? Look, I'm probably going to give it one more week with Emery, so I'd probably lean him over Walden.
I think I'd probably do the same, yeah.
Just because there's the position that he plays in. Just on the outside, maybe there's a 20% chance he becomes a really good 15. I'm willing to take that kind of gamble over someone that that potentially may not have that role in about 6 weeks at all. Anything more? Actually, there's a few more things I've got for the Blues. I thought one point was interesting was watching Naholo. He picked up 24 odd points for pretty much doing nothing. Is that what you saw as well?
Yeah, it's weird because then the other side of the field was somebody who also kind of didn't really do a lot, but got the points for doing nothing, and that was Jet Li. So yeah, some players just do that. Some players just don't do a hell of a lot and still make points, and I think we'll probably come across a few of those later on.
It's an interesting one though, right? So we might be seeing a little bit of a trend of the right wingers being a little bit more consistent than, say, left wingers because they take those kickoffs, they field those exits, and there's a defender to be beaten straight off the bat versus a left winger which doesn't traditionally get that kickoff. Something to be aware of anyway. But that's when Naholo picked up a lot of his points, is that, it's about 3 or 4 kickoffs that he bet 2 or 3 guys. And just accumulated, and then maybe got an offload off as well. But never saw Naholo in his kind of free form wave. But if this is a bad game for Naholo, I'll take that every day of the week. Duffy, good week for him as well. And Ioane doing Ioane things, both of them. Akira only losing out to Warren Whiteley as the top loose forward this week, and Rico just being really, really good. Switched to centre at what minute mark? Do we remember? 65, something like that.
Couldn't tell you, but it was, yeah, there was a bit of a reshuffle. I'm still kind of buying in a little bit to what Tana said earlier in the season, which was, why do you take the best left winger in the world and move him? Yep, agreed.
I couldn't find anything anywhere online about this or on Twitter sphere, but did Sapawanga pick up a little knock in this game, and that's why Fletcher came on?
He did, but it was probably around about the time that you might have been thinking about subs anyway. They talked about this knock all through the second half,
right?
And he stayed out there.
Sure.
And I think he was even carrying it when he took the last sort of shot at goal and then subbed off immediately afterwards. So it obviously wasn't bad enough that he couldn't kick or even play on. So, yeah.
Okay, all right, no, fair enough. I think maybe just if you've got Sapawanga in your team, just see if you can find any information out in the next couple of days to see whether that is a thing or not. But yeah,
on a buy anyway. So
great point.
Not an immediate problem.
Great point. Yep, you probably don't need to be scrounging around for Fletcher Smith at this point.
And to be fair, you'll probably struggle to find information because those teams that are on buys, you just hear nothing from them.
Yeah, that's right. They go into the cone of silence, don't they? So I've got 3 front rows to circle this week that maybe, I think that's one of the, you brought this up actually, you mentioned it's, you're a bit surprised that there's not more talk about front rows because, there's clearly like a top 2, maybe even a top 3 if you include the Sharks in it, and then everybody else and the rest of us are fighting around to find morsels of information about which is a good front row this season, kind of like the Cheetahs last year, but I've seen the Blues front row on quite a few waiver wires. That'll be one of my top priorities. They got good running meters, good defenders beaten as well. And it wasn't just based on a single try. I think, for me, they're a decent pickup. Do you think they're going to be mostly owned?
Yeah, I've seen them a little bit out there as well. I think they came in with a reputation a little bit from the 2 previous seasons where they'd scored. Obviously, people that did know that Charlie Fuamawina had left, might have left them. But they've been out there, and they'd definitely be in that conversation. There's another couple we'll talk about later on. But yeah, 100% like what you said earlier, that I looked at the front row position, and it was actually after our start bench show that I was really surprised that no one was asking questions about front rows, because it is one of those positions that at this stage of the season, you just don't know. You don't know. Someone's going to emerge, and you don't know who it is. So I'm sort of watching these front rows like a hawk. in quite a few of my leagues, I've picked up a couple, and I'm just going to hold on to both, and I'm going to see which one's going to pay off.
Yep. No, it's a good way to do it. Absolutely is a very good way to do it. I was rolling with the Chiefs, which I will not be rolling with from here on forwards. I will be trying to get either the Blues or maybe a couple that sounds like we may be bringing up in a little bit. Maybe one from the next game that we're going to cover.
Maybe we should talk about that now.
Let's do that. Let's merge right into that. So you're obviously a little bit impressed with the Tongan Thor?
the
Tongan Tour.
Right, well, there's a nickname for you then. I mean, I think I'd read reports coming into the season. They were saying, he'd improved his scrumming, so he was going to be, more of a fixture in the team than he'd been in the past. And I think we saw some of that, look
Agreed. Far
more solid. We already kind of knew what he was like with ball in hand, and we saw a little bit in the tens again, so there was never any question about that. And as we've seen with other front rows, one player can make that difference.
Yep.
Whether it's Malcolm Marks or Charlie or, Dane Coles, it does make a difference.
No, it does, and that's one of the ones I've got circled, and I think they will almost certainly be available in most of your leagues if you're looking around for it. They did play the Rebels, so there is a chance that a few managers may have picked it up looking at the matchup this week, but I think on the whole that they're a good one to target as well.
And this is considering them playing in a match where they're a man down the whole time, which obviously wrecks your scrum, but still managed to hold up, and score points.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great shout. I think, I'll be putting waiver wire picks in for them as well. A big, massive 38 tackles they made. 38 across the front row.
That's huge.
It is. To be fair to the Highlanders, actually, they picked up 44, which is out of this world, but 38 is next level.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you would almost expect that in a game when you're a man down, because I'm assuming they would have been on the wrong side of the possession stats. Probably had to have made it. I don't know why the Highlanders were like they were.
Yeah, I was surprised at that. I was trying to infer, looking at the, are these all in losing efforts? Looking at the Reds, Hurricanes, Sunwolves, but then no. The Highlanders number one. I guess we probably don't need to talk about Higginbotham losing his head, and Lucan Tui probably should have gone as well. Can you skip over that?
Well, that's the one, I mean, Higginbotham, like you said, not worth talking about. The other one, I mean, we joked about it on Friday night, that the ref just tried to find any reason he could to not give it. He just didn't want to do it. No. But anyway, it was sort of slightly farcical. But let's move on from that then. And I'd imagine probably the biggest talking point out of this is going to be Hodge and Debrashini, I'd say. I mean, it's going to be have the most impact moving forward.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that, because Debrashini did not play well. Scored a few points, and as I say, he's trying to kick the rugby ball like Cristiano Ronaldo kicks free kicks. He's trying to cut across it sometimes. It was just incredible. It looked like Mel Meninga at one point. Yeah,
hit the valve, try and get that little bit of movement on it.
That's right. He's trying to get the ARs to to go one way. So one of the points I was trying to figure out was if this is a continuation, because Hodge, in a team that was playing against 14 and scored a lot of points, scored a lot of tries, scored a lot of conversions, he didn't get much. He didn't get much at all.
No, he didn't.
It's a major concern.
It is, yeah. And you don't know what to tell people, because it's kind of come out of the blue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think anyone can really do much about it. You can't insure against it by picking up another midfield because he's going to be playing midfield for the Rebels. There's talk of potentially shifting Hodge in. I've heard a few people mute that, but I guess in a winning effort like this, which I don't know how much he can take out of it in such a disruptive type game like this, I think they'll probably stick with the same formula against the Sunwolves. And if they go 2 for 2, then I can't see too many changes coming in there. And this might be a long season for Hodge owners.
Yep, I think you're right. And I think you're also right. I mean, whether you read too much into this, I probably wouldn't. I think you might have seen Haylett Petty's, and I'm not down on Haylett Petty at all, but I think you might have seen his biggest game of the season as well. It just seemed like as soon as they went a man down, there was just a constant overlap.
Yep.
And they didn't really have to work very hard to score those tries.
Yeah, I just looked up Naivalu's running metres after scoring 2 tries, and it was 20 metres. So I'm pretty sure he did that running from the corner flag to the post.
That's right, yeah. It's just a skip pass and try. That's it.
It was. On the flip side of that, though, I guess there's a few performances from the Reds that, as much as you can't read too much into a thumping by the Rebels, you probably can't read too much into some of the players on the Reds that perform a little bit more poorly as well. Like Karevi, for instance, expecting a little bit more from him. I think Tuttle was one that kind of raised a couple of eyebrows. We thought there was an outside chance that he could be kicking goals, but I guess as soon as John O'Lance came in, there was a chance of that, or a reduced chance of that may be happening, and it kind of unfolded that way as well, with John O'Lance taking the kicks. Now, Tuttle did actually take one of the kicks towards the end, a conversion, and if he'd got that, he would have been the number 7 halfback. So, as it was, he still was the number 10 halfback, scoring 2 points, was it, or 4? I can't even remember, but it was terrible. But halfback is just such a wasteland that I think you're probably still going to stick it out on the chance that either John O'Lance picks up his injury a little bit earlier than normally, or he does take over the goal kicking, or Brad Thorne just rips the whole team up and then starts the game. Not sure.
Yeah, it's interesting though, just jumping back just for a second when you're talking about halfback being a wasteland and players doing nothing. I mean, I felt that Augie Pulu did nothing and still scored 10 points. I mean, that's the value of a player like that. Does nothing, scores 10.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do look at the halfback position, it's the usual suspects that are in there. TJ Perenara, Pulu, 3 and 4. Aaron Smith and Genia. Genia had a really good game, rolling back the clock. Sweet haircut as well to boot. Aaron Smith or Will Genia, who took the first round haircuts?
I felt like there was just a little bit more volume to Guineas.
Oh, there was. No, much more volume.
A
little bit more dedication to detail, I think, as well.
Did he have some stuff etched into it, maybe? To the side? That's what you want to do.
Yeah, he's got the names of his kids or something etched into his cornrow. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so I think I would still roll with Tuttle. I wouldn't be throwing the baby out with the bathwater just yet, because there is a chance that down the line that we know what fly halves are like in terms of injuries, and we know what John O'Lance is like. So keep a watching brief on that. Anything more from this game? We talked about the front rows. We talked about Jack D. Naivalu. English was pretty solid as well. Good looking as always.
He just does what he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, absolutely.
But with style, with panache.
He does, with style, panache, and eyeliner. Yeah, looks really, really good. Sunwolves this week for him, so that looks pretty enticing as well. But I don't know. Can we say that after one game that the Sunwolves are going to be this season? Are going to be this start all your players against the Sunwolves? I think you might want to just shelve that until this week.
Yeah, we'll see. I think there'll be points in these games.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, actually, let's get on to that game because it's the next one up as well. Jesus, these segues are amazing. All that media training that we've been doing, it's wonderful work. So, looking at the traditional scorers for fantasy rugby, you were hoping that Chance Penny or Henry Spate were going to do something, right? Didn't happen.
No, it didn't. And on the flip side, how many times do Sunwolves wingers have to come up before people will start to believe in them? Their wingers they just always score. Like you go back through the kind of history of the Sunwolves from the Yamada, Shota Emi, Matsushima, and outside backs generally, because there's also Villieu and a few other guys. There's probably some names I've forgotten as well, but they just have a knack for scoring. Fukuoka. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
very true.
Yeah.
Loving the first try that Saumaki scored. Rolling maul. They said they've been concentrating on that 15-man maul, or close to 15-man maul. And I was like, well, it's interesting. I guess it seems to work.
And you were thinking, maybe just concentrate on the basics, guys.
Yeah, that's right. Pass, catch, tackle. Yep.
Yeah. No, we're just going straight for the 15-man maul.
Yeah, shame with Valentini. Looks to be an MCL as well. He was in a knee brace afterwards. Haven't seen much more of that. Looked promising in the small snippets we had of that. Nasarani looked good as well. Didn't quite translate into the points that perhaps managers were hoping for, but it never quite got that clean break, or he never quite got that, his arms free as he mostly does. He did in the pre-season. So I think more to come from managers who drafted him.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and one of the things that you'd hope out of this podcast that people could get is that we can at least identify players that perhaps haven't scored highly, but we think, have a big season ahead of them, because otherwise everybody can look at the points and go, well, that guy played well. But so that's a good point, because a player like that who didn't light it up in terms of points, but just with the eye test, you're looking at that guy thinking he's going to be good this year. So, if you're in a league where somebody didn't see it or was just watching the points or whatever, if you can somehow, engineer a trade for a guy like that, I'd, totally want to do that.
Yep, 100%. Looked really destructive, and I think more to come. Cusack looked pretty solid, actually, replacing Pocock as well.
Yeah, no, he did.
Got a couple of turnovers in there. And I guess no real surprise, Banks at 15 to put up some points against Sunwell's team.
Yep, wait and see, though.
Yeah, exactly. Anything more? Oh, actually, I do have one more. So we talked about Emery. I think I'm willing to give it another shot. I'm not sure if I'm willing to start him. I guess it all depends on options. But one player to look at is the right winger for the Sunwolves, because he's actually listed as a midfielder in the game, so Lemeki. And he looks shifty, so he looks a different kettle of fish than Saumaki. Saumaki looks like he's going to run over the top of you and beat you at the same time. And Lemeki looks like he just wants to beat you either with pace or a jink. He looks a bit more Jason Emery-ish.
Yep.
So I think that's
some value in there. Yeah, and the Tongan Godzilla.
Yeah, I like that. That was good. Rich Freeman was some good Rich form, actually. It's some good couple of comments on there.
Yeah.
When the Georgian prop came on about sumo wrestling, that was quite fun.
Yeah. So all those guys, actually, like they're all going to have some value, I think.
Yep.
So I think, depending on what your bench is looking like, you could probably stash any of those guys away. But yeah, definitely Lemeki, I think, just because of the change of position.
Yeah, indeed. For those that haven't seen our start bench show that we do on Friday afternoons, 6:30 New Zealand time, if you've got any start bench questions during the week, you can't decide who you want to put and who you want to bench, send them through on Twitter and put the hashtag startbench, and we'll try and address as many as we can on the start bench show as possible. Much appreciated everyone tuning in last time. We had a really good response. It's one of the fun parts of the job is conversing with our managers and having a bit of banter and having a bit of a chat about who we think is going to be starting or not. It's a lot of fun, so please do tune into that. And you can watch it afterwards as well, and still post a few questions about, who do you think is going to start bench on Saturday. So it's not just restricted to Friday as well. But make sure you put that start bench in your tweet, and we'll try and address it as the first port of order when we jump on the session on Friday. Right, let's move on to your beloved Chiefs versus the Crusaders. I guess we should start at the top. What were your views on Damian McKenzie?
Rumours of his death have been greatly exaggerated, I think.
Yeah, well, his brother died, didn't he?
Goodness briefly.
Gracious, yeah. Jesus, that's harsh.
Yeah. What can you say? Like, I kind of looked at it and thought he found other ways to score that he wouldn't have had playing fullback, taking it to the line and finding 2 passes for assists. He was involved in any way that any time he's involved, he's going to score.
Yep. No, I think, I kind of, if you look at, there's a few comments, well, actually wish I take this right back. So I'll start right at the start. So I guess the 2 factors to why he was further down in the first round than 1 overall. One factor is still out there, so we're looking at the attrition of fly halves last year. So that's why the first fly half off the board wasn't until the second half of the first round. That's still, we'll find out whether that's a trend or not that will continue this year. Don't know yet. But in terms of McKenzie versus Foley and Mo'unga, he took that round 1 to McKenzie, absolutely. Looked really, really strong. I think purely from a rugby perspective, it took him a little bit of time to get into the game. There's a few mistakes that he made early on, and also a few mistakes towards the end as well. But I don't think in terms of fantasy that really translated into any kind of negativity. I think the only kind of point I would say with this looking ahead to the season is a couple of remarks that Colin Cooper made, that he wasn't particularly happy with some of the exit decisions from DMak, and he looked like he still was a 15 playing in 10 position, which, fairly understandable because that is his first run out, and you are playing the Crusaders as well. Let's bear that in mind away from home. So I just think there's a little bit of coaching that's going on. I heard Tabai Matson say the same thing as well, and I wonder if a few of the times he's going to be asked to kind of shelve that attacking instinct in certain areas of the pitch where he didn't on Saturday. But as I say, look, round one, completely to Damian McKenzie, looked really good.
And the other thing, you just noticed every now and then that when the ball was actually going out, usually from set phase, he wasn't actually always at first receiver. It would go to somebody else and he'd be looping around the back.
Yep.
So they're actually trying to use him in a sort of a wider area, which I thought was kind of interesting. And also saw him fielding kicks a bit deeper as well. So, they're using him in different positions. I don't think he's just going to be standing there catching and passing. It's just, it would be stupid to use a player like that in that way.
Yep. So one of my kind of takeaways, and maybe I'm looking at this through a certain lens that I think we all know, that I reckon last year, if he was playing 15 in this type of game, he would have been scoring 45 points. It looked like that type of game for him if he was at 15 the whole time, because Ngatai was getting some breaks and whoever went back there afterwards as well. There's just to be a lot of space. I don't think we need to get into penalty try, not a penalty try. I think Alatoa should have probably been sent off for a high tackle, but as the commentators like to say, he ducked into it, which is nowhere to be in the rule book, but hey ho.
Oh, and there was no intent.
Oh, the intent
That's the other one.
and ducking. Yeah, those are two really crucial non-words in the rule book.
Yeah, because mine is important. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what intent is.
Yeah. Let's get on to Ngatai though. So he got a knee injury, came off just 20 minutes ago. I read an article suggesting that it's an MCO, which may only be, the article says at least 2 weeks. So that gave me a little bit of a fill-up. I thought that was good news, to be honest. It looked like it could be a little bit worse than that, but if it's that long, then great. But I think that means Shooter's probably going to get a chance. Probably mixed in with this as well as the news just before kick-off that Tim Willemse is out for the season. So he didn't even get to the start line this time, unfortunately. Poor old Tim's had a bit of a rough time of it, but that means obviously there's going to be more time for LMNP, Shooter, and who do we think's going to jump on that other wing?
Yeah, well, I was trying to think about who was on the bench, and I can't remember.
No, I wondered if they might go with McNichol. He seems to be a bit of a favourite of them.
Yeah. I mean, I know Pulu wasn't in the squad for this game, was he? So,
true. Yep. And
but I can't. Do we know who was the outside back replacement? Who came on?
It was Marty McKenzie, I think, wasn't it? Wasn't he playing? Wasn't he covering both? And they had like a couple of midfielders on the bench, midfield and a halfback.
You might be right.
Marty McKenzie.
Yeah, no, we've done a good job though of doing some research on
So
this.
it'll be someone like the great Christchurch boys high. 13, I think, is probably a guy on the bench, and then at halfback. But while you're doing that, disappointing output from Brad Weber, but we've discussed...
Sean Wainui.
Yes, right, yep. Very, very prominent on Instagram. If you're not following Sean Wainui, please do, you'll see why.
So I guess, I mean, was he in this? I suppose he was probably in the squad for his utility value. So it'll be wait and see whether he gets promoted to the starting lineup or they jump straight into a McNichol or a Pulu. So
interestingly enough, we just added Sean Wainui to the system about 2 hours ago, and that was one of the decisions we had to make because he is a genuine utility. But I think he certainly is a little bit more midfielder than he is outside back. So we've listed him in the midfield.
Could have some value then.
Could do. Yep, could do. If they decide to go that route. Yep.
Of course, yeah.
Or if they just stick wings on strings. But LMNOP, really good outing for him.
Yeah. No, looked fast.
Did.
Always knew he was big, but he looked speedy.
Yep.
He actually put a bit of a stop go. I think it might have been on Seta or someone on that far side and just left him for dead.
Yeah, Seta Tamanavalu. Just didn't really go his way. Actually, to be fair, it didn't even go Bridges' way either until about the last 5 minutes, where Bridge picked up 25 points or something in like literally about 10 minutes. Because I was playing against him, and I thought we were in a pretty good position here. And then Damian McKenzie passed him all those tries. Yeah,
I think DMak's got Bridge on his fantasy team.
I think so too. I was quickly refreshing to see if DMak got that assist. Anything more from this match?
Actually, no, there isn't, but I'm just trying to think. There was a match where somebody fired the ball into somebody else's head. And I picked it up at school.
That was...
I got called back, I think. I got called back, but I can't remember what it was. But at the time I was thinking, can you get an assist off your head?
I think it was TJ Perenara into Tumanga Allen, and Geordie Barrett scored it against the Brumbies, or the Force. I can't remember who it was.
It was this week.
Oh, this week?
Yeah, there was a game, but unfortunately it was actually called back.
Oh, I like this. There's one for the listeners. Let us know what that was. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody kind of offloaded into somebody else's head, and it went forward, but they found a hand in there somewhere. But anyway, yeah. And I'm not sure if the Falcon assist counts. I mean, it should really count double to me, but yeah, anyway.
It should do. All right, let's get into let's play our 4 in form game, brought to you by Manager Pro, where winning is everything. Go to www.fantasyrugbydraft.com/Manager Pro. Mossman, can you name me any of the top 4 players in the form statistic?
I think I can name you the top one.
Go.
Deante?
Interestingly enough, no. But he's
Really?
number 2.
Well, that's criminal.
Kind of, but when you know number 1, you'll realise why. We've already discussed him on the podcast.
Is it somebody that played last week as well?
No.
No, okay.
Exactly, so that's the point. And it's at this point, I probably should point out how form is calculated, so it's looked at the last 3 weeks, the average of the last 3 weeks. So if you've only played one game, that's your score in form.
Gee, that's tricky. Okay, no. Who was it?
It's a winger for the Sunwolves.
Oh, right. So it was Saumaki.
Saumaki with 42.1 points.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Number 1.
From
Deante, number 2. Absolutely. And we have literally talked about the other 2 as well.
All right. Well, good.
One, Damian McKenzie.
Sure. Yeah.
And
I guess
your mate, Dane Haley-Betty.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah, just edged out Rico Ioane.
Right.
So if you want to go and have a look at that, make sure you subscribe to Manager Pro. Some really good value this week with, it seemed that the news of Warwick Gallant didn't filter through to mainstream media for quite some time, but we had it almost 12 hours before any of the mainstream media. So those with Manager Pro got a little bit of a step up with the Warwick Gallant news, paying off already. Right, let's move on to the remaining games. And the remaining games being the Stormers Waratahs. So Israel Folau picked up 20 points in about 20 minutes, and he ended up with 17. So everyone's eyes lit up with Israel Folau, and he looked like Israel Folau. That catch and try was criminal. That's posterising someone. That was abuse.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you want to make of this game, mate? Where do you want to go?
That's me just because I at the time I was watching it and I just assumed he was killing it, you know.
Yeah.
So actually, yeah, it's a bit of a surprise to see him come back to the pack. Well, I think probably the number one talking point of the weekend is in this game, as I alluded to in the intro. You know, so that's Willemse. Yeah, I mean, shit. What are you going to make of that? Like, you know, there must be people. I mean, here's my take on it, and it's of absolutely no help to anybody because it's basically, I told you so.
Yes.
And that is, you know, this was somebody that we saw for maybe the last 2 weeks of last season. So didn't have a strong track record, you know, coming into this season, and was going ahead of people like Sapawanga, which to me was just crazy.
Sure. But are you referring to the fact that he's not kicking goals, or his injury that looked really, really bad and he may not play for a while?
I was just talking about the goal kicking.
Okay, all right. So when you started out and with that nice intro, I thought you were referring to the fact that this could be a really serious injury and you're not going to have him for the rest of the season.
I didn't see him get injured. When did he get injured?
About the 20-minute mark.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, it looked bad. Might have been a shoulder. Not too sure. I've been scratching around to try and find news from it as well. But to your point, SP was kicking before.
He was?
Before he went off. Absolutely he was. And he's kicking well too. So probably not a help to anybody, but I think this, for me, this is one of the start of the Andre Pollard went down as well in the Bulls game, and it looked bad, but he got back up again, so it must have just been a jarring. But don't know. This could be the start of the fly half trend. Not too sure, but it looked pretty bad as well.
So yeah, I guess then the wider question is, what does this mean if he's out? I mean, George Whitehead is the man on the bench, yep. But you'd almost question if SP is going to carry on kicking, yep. then nobody has value in that 10 shirt for the Stormers anyway.
Yep, agreed. Especially against the Crusaders, I would say that.
Yeah, I mean, and this week 100%, and I'm just thinking, moving beyond that as well. Mm-hmm. So we know what this all means.
Yeah, look, it looked bad. I urge owners not to knee-jerk, wait till the news comes out, which probably should happen when South Africa wakes up this morning. So we're recording this on Monday night at about 8:30 New Zealand time. So hopefully some news comes out today or tomorrow before the waiver wire, so that you can adjust. But yeah, it did look pretty bad. So SP kicking. What do you make of Dylan Lates as well? Is it just a game for him? He's got the Crusaders coming up. Once he gets home, they've got a really tough start. I think they actually have the Hurricanes after that as well. Are you going to be benching him?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Is because last season when I had Lates, I think I might have even had him on a couple of teams. When he went away on tour, he was awful the whole tour. Scored nothing. It wasn't until he got back to South Africa that he was lights out again. But I think there was a 3-game stretch, and I think the Crusaders game might have been one of them. Maybe it wasn't, because I'm not sure they wouldn't play them 2 consecutive years. Maybe they would. I don't know, because they've rearranged the season. But in fact, I seem to recall Stormers Crusaders last year, and the Stormers not doing anything at all. And him especially. Yeah. So there was a stretch, like I said, when I was on tour that didn't play well, and I just remember that, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he didn't do very well.
Yeah, players like Tom English and I might start looking to play ahead of him as well. I think there's a few that you can probably slot in like that. So I've got the Waratahs front row circled here as well. Now I would go Blues, Reds, Waratahs front row, but they are likely to be out there on the waiver wire as well. So those are the 3 front rows that I'll be aiming for. Now, whether that's repeatable or not, I'm not too sure. Stormers obviously played well, but I think they're owned in most leagues, so I'm not sure they're anything you can go for. Anything more from this? A little bit disappointed with Beale. Didn't put 1.3 points or something like that. But
yeah, I mean, he did have one almost certain try. Taken away from him by. This is one of the weird things about this. All of the weekend was kind of like different games highlighted issues with different rules. So we saw issues with cards in the Rebels game, and this one, for whatever reason, there were 3 or 4 knockdown passes in this game.
Yeah.
That were either penalised or let go, and you couldn't really understand why some were penalised and some weren't. And you also couldn't understand why some of them last season were yellow cards, and this season some of them were and some of them weren't. So it was almost like this rule was on display in this game, and it was inconsistent.
Inconsistent, to say the best. I like Gus Gardner. I think he's one of the better referees, but yeah, that was a bit strange, shall we say, some of his decisions, especially that one. I think it was mainly because they were running a different way. It looked like the ball might be going backwards, but it certainly wasn't.
Running a different way.
Well, so they were running he was running towards his try line.
Oh,
and it looked like he was because I think it was it
I thought maybe you were talking about, egg and spoon race or, 3-legged race or something. They're just doing something different. They're running different.
There is a better than even chance that I was talking about something rubbish like that. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Is there anything more from this match?
No, I don't think there is. Just interesting when you were talking before about Damian McKenzie and his exits and being someone that's not a natural 10. And SP Murray looked exactly the same in this game. There are a couple of times where he's in his in goal and he tried to run it out. And You're like, why are you doing this?
But he ran it out criminally. There was one time where he was just, I don't know, there must have been 5 meters to the right-hand sideline and people around him were just like, what are you doing?
And he just ran to the corner flag and got tackled out.
Ran to the corner flag, he was being bundled out, and he threw it at the feet of Dylan Lays. Dylan Lays just looked at him deadpan and said, what are you doing? What are you doing? Line out 5 metres, Waratahs.
Yeah,
it was terrible. All right, let's move on to the Lions match, Lions Jaguares. I'm starting to wonder if it's start all your players against the Jaguares. Now, I know it's a little bit harsh travelling to South Africa. They seem to like their clubs over there. So I'm not sure you can really read too much into it, but the last 2 matches have been filled with stats for players that have just carved it up. I'm not sure we need to even focus on Deante. He looked really, really strong, so long as he's going to be in there. I think it's probably worth just checking to see when Combrink and Skosana are back, because I assume those 2 will come in, and there is going to be a point in time where you might need to get something for Deante. Would you think that that's a fair assumption, or do you think if he keeps on like this, not leaving the team?
Gee, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because you're talking about 2 established players and 2 Springboks, and then you're also talking about a couple of performances, well, this one especially, against arguably, one of those weaker teams. But
something to think for later anyway.
So I do think you're right. I think eventually you probably should start thinking. It might be that if you can swing it match before they go away on tour or something, you can come up with some kind of trade. I think that'd be worth thinking about. The only thing I wondered after watching him was just whether he's the fastest player in Super Rugby, because he just seemed electric. And I did wonder about Sinatla. I guess must be up there, but couldn't think of too many others.
Goodness gracious. Got to be up there. So in Deante's try, did you see the part that Yokoen Tuchelet played in that?
Did he kind of turn his back on him or something?
He turned his back on him and took out 3 Jaguares tacklers at the same time. Genuinely, if you want to see one of the more Keystone Cop moments of the weekend, have a look at that from the end-on view, the end-goal view of him running towards you. It is so funny. And on that point, what the hell has happened to Tuchelet? He just doesn't look the player that he was last season at all. And I wondered if there's something in this, because when we first recorded the pre-season podcast with Paul Tate and went through the Jaguares team, it was rumoured that him and Matera were going to be co-captaining. Then pre-season happened, and it just became Matera. So I wonder if the coach has gone, I can see this form is not particularly good, or something's a little bit amiss with Tuchelet, and we're just going to leave the captaincy to Matera. But Tuchelet does not look good to the eye. Did you see that as well, or am I being harsh?
Well, I didn't actually watch this game. I just saw the highlights, so I couldn't tell you. But, okay. I mean, he's got pedigree. He's not someone that you go away from in a hurry.
No, I know, and I've been urging people to be patient as well, but okay, maybe being away from home, let's give him a home game to really evaluate to see where he is at, but I don't know. I'll probably be hiding him on my bench for that match against the Hurricanes. We discussed on our start bench show, I think Mapo came up a lot, and a lot of Mapo versus X. And for this week, Mapo would have won most of those conversations. He looks really, really strong. And he just looks like he's going to break the line every single time he gets the ball. Van Rensburg came on with only about 10, 15 minutes to go. I think they're slowly going to move Forster out. I think this next team sheet you'll probably see Van Rensburg and Mapo in there, and that'll be happy days for the Van Rensburg owner, who picked up 16 points in a 15-minute performance. So back to putting out what he does. But so I think another player in the same mould as Mapo that never really gets the credit, and Europe pains to point this out a lot of the time, is Kutsia as well. He's just quietly going about his business, knocking up 25 points.
Yep. That's what he does.
That's exactly what he does.
And speaking of Mapo and winning some of those contests, how about the one versus Proctor?
Yeah, I think Mapo might have won that with a bit left over.
He might have won that.
Might have. I'll have to check the stats.
You can't be sure. Unless, was it Proctor over the next 3 or 4 weeks versus Mapo?
I'm not sure.
You might have a chance. Yeah.
No, that was an interesting one as well. Who knew that about the Hurricanes? But hey-o. I think again, underrated players, Godzilla, Mapo, but they're championship-winning players on your team that just put it in, week out. You can get late in your draft, and you can probably still even pull off trades for, because they're just not sexy. Warren Whiteley, top loose forward. Those who persisted from last week got rewarded with a really good outing this week. So you're saying you didn't see this match?
No, I didn't. No.
There's probably only two players you can really trust in the Jaguares. Is Boffelli and Lasana. So Lasana seems to be carrying the ball strongly, and it's not huge points. I think he picked up about 12 or 13 points, but in terms of loose forwards, that's pretty strong. And Boffelli is taking those long range kicks as well, and he got on the end of a couple. And he is going looking for a little bit of work, but he's also going for a little bit too much work, and he ends up being a pillar a lot of rucks, which is very frustrating as a Boffelli owner. Do you watch the Hurricanes Bulls then?
I did. Yep, did see this.
What do you think?
My biggest takeaway actually, and we're going back to the discussions about front rows, and one that's probably under the radar. So the Bulls front row didn't score a lot of points here, but the Bulls type 5, and obviously the locks will get the kind of the kudos because they got the points, but the attitude and the endeavour and the kind of the way that it looks like Mitchell has got them playing, they look like a different team.
Yep.
Like the way they were playing in that type 5, it's that short passing, players running off props and props, sort of offloading off the shoulder and all this kind of stuff that you just never saw from them before. They really look like a different team, and it didn't translate into points directly for the Bulls front row. I mean, they did score a try, but they also conceded a yellow card, so I think it worked out to about 6 or 7. But I think moving forward, if this is the way they're going to play, and it looks like it is, these guys, I think, they're going to score.
Yep. I saw that as well. That was one of my notes that I've got here, is that Mitchell's got them playing a very New Zealand-centric or Lions-centric, I think if you look at South Africa way, where those props are doing it, and RG Snyman and moves like Diaga were just streaking down the middle of the field, and they just got their arms free pretty much every carry they were doing. If they didn't break the line, they were getting their arms free. Very concerning for the Hurricanes, but I'm not sure how you stop those monsters if you light a fire under them. Yeah.
I mean, moves like Diago, a couple of, reverse sort of passes, behind the back and stuff. It was just showtime, it's almost like he's just been given free license, it seems to suit him.
I was going to ask you a question, a little short quiz on who do you think the top scorer in this match was, but I think you're probably going to get it.
Is that AG, right?
It was, AG Snyman. And then it was Jesse Creel, and then it was moves like Diaga. Yeah, it was really, really good. Really, really strong. I mean, I've got waiver wire pickups for RG and Diaga if they're going to be playing like this, and we probably have seen their best matchup, but if it's a style of play that Mitchell is going to try and impress on them, then these guys are going to be the beneficiaries of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Looking at the Hurricanes, Houston injury is one of concern, I believe, and I think that may force a change in Barrett going to 15, Proctor 13, Asso 14, which is roughly the way that they finished the game as well, with Ben Lang coming on.
Yep.
So I think that's likely to be what we're going to see, which is good because Arso didn't get near enough opportunity with the ball, and the Bulls were particularly clever about how to keep it away from Proctor, and he didn't particularly. Well, he looked like a 13 playing out of position, or someone who hadn't played 15 in Super Rugby for a while. Barrett coming on made a little bit of a difference, but they controlled the game pretty well. Pollard didn't really pick up the fantasy rugby points you'd be hoping for, and especially in a bit of a low-scoring game like this. But certainly from a rugby perspective, I think it bodes quite well down there. TJ Perenara showing his class again. Still in the top kind of 3 in the conversation of halfbacks. Really, really strong. What do you make of this? Anything more from this match at all? Anything more actually from the weekend as we kind of put a bow on it?
Oh, I don't think so, actually. No, I'm inclined to not try and read too much into some of these kind of results early in the season, so I'm not reading too much into the Hurricanes' loss. And other than that, I think it's, also trying not to talk too much about guys that just scored a lot of points because, hey, everybody can see that.
Yeah, exactly. And I like taking flyers on your RG Snymans in your positions where you can. But just be careful about who you are getting rid of. If it's your first time playing Fantasy Rugby Draft, be very, very conscious about who you are cutting, because you have a whole bunch of piranhas in your league that are liable to sweep on that player if he's decent, or if he's got prospects about the second half of the season of picking up points. One other point I wanted to talk about the Hurricanes one was I am hearing conversations about Blade Thompson potentially coming in starting at 8 this week. So one to watch out as well. But again, you've got Blade Thompson on your team. He's not on your waiver wire. I think if folks were looking at it and thinking about cutting him because he wasn't starting and didn't put out some points, then I would say a little bit of a word of warning and perhaps think twice about that. All right, that's about it for this week. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy REG Draft. As I say, if you've got some start bench questions during the week and you want us to address them on the Start Bench show on Facebook on Friday, then please put the hashtag Start Bench and we'll get to them. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
I think we can work on the outro too.
To your repeater.